the of community development and engagement for Corangamite Shire. So we obviously cover from Skipton down to Port Campbell, a significant difference between the communities of all of those areas. So my role covers all things community development and engagement, which obviously takes into that the youth aspect. So yeah, I started in December of 2024. Launched into the council needs to engage on their, legislative requirements of the community plan and the council plan and the finance plan. I'm like, oh yeah, cool, excellent, I'll do that. And also your youth strategies are for renewal this year, so go. Just add into it, I moved from Tasmania, so just around the corner. So I didn't have any local connections. I didn't really have any place to start. So I started by talking to people. There's a blank screen. Just keep rabbiting. That's okay. Still a blank screen. Here we go.
There we go.
All right. Maybe. Next one. All right. Oh, Yep. Okay. So in Corangamite Shire, we have just over 2,500 young people, according to the last census, so that would have changed, aged between 10 and 25. The consultation process that I undertook, we did it over about a 6-month period because obviously it took a bit of time to find the connections, but we managed to get the voices of over 520 young people, which is nearly 20% of all young people across the Shire. We were able to get the voices also of all representative of all age groups, so from the 12 to 25. The 18 to 25 were particularly hard to hunt down, and I literally did hunt them down. I commandeered wherever they were, whether it be at a pub or at a footy match or at a music festival. I'd just go and chat to them. So that was just really important, but also making sure that it wasn't just sports, wasn't just schools, wasn't just any particular area, making sure that we capture that broad range of young people. My biggest advice would be move beyond traditional methods. Yes, by all means, have community forums and invite them along. By all means, have an online survey and email it out to the schools and every group and cross your fingers and hope they fill it in. But what I found is that with those limited methods, you've got limited results. You need to have the conversation. So if they were to say, oh, we want more stuff to do, what does that mean? If it's just in an online survey, they'll literally write more stuff to do, or McDonald's in Skipton. We got a lot of McDonald's in Skipton. But having the conversations, what is it about McDonald's that you want? Oh, it's somewhere to hang out. Right. Now we're getting somewhere, but you want somewhere to actually go, somewhere where it's yours, somewhere it's safe. So
somewhere that's open.
Somewhere that's open, somewhere with free Wi-Fi. Someone with Wi-Fi, because, some of our areas. Sorry, I'm used to just having my little dots. Move. Doesn't want to play. There we go. Go to where they are. So go, if there's a land care group, you've got 1 or 2 young people, it doesn't have to be big numbers. Go and plant the trees next to them. If they're at a footy match, go sit down next to them, or have a meat pie while and chat in their space where they're safe. Talk about what they're interested in. Don't force them all into, what do you think about something the council wants to know? What is important to you? And let them lead that conversation. But be honest, be genuine, and really listen to what they're saying. Yep. Have a chat at every event you hold. So over a 6-month period, whatever we did, I'd go and chat to them, whether we were, having a tennis day or, a pottery workshop, whatever they chose to come out to, then find out, why did you come out? What is it about this that you enjoyed? What would make it better? Those sorts of general conversations. And don't be restricted by set questions. We held a youth leadership summit, so we had about 100 young people of high school age. And again, very broad, ranged from year 7 to year 12. Oh dear, it's all right. We held that in Camperdown. We bussed all the young people in. We made sure there was no as minimal barriers to participation as there could be. But through that, what made it really important is we then had a youth Q&A panel. So it was young people leading questions of other young people and then the conversations. So again, not us, leading the count. We want to know this from a council perspective. What do young people want to know? And by knowing what they were asking, told us what was really important to them as well. And really encouraging that. And that was a fantastic way. And they were honest about what they want. And they will tell you. You give them a platform, you give them a microphone, you give them an opportunity. They have opinion. They want to be valued. And they want us to listen and do something with what they tell us. That's really important too. We had a breakfast with the mayor. I needed to get into the schools. Don't be limited by only going to schools, but obviously they were a big catchment of our young people. But I wanted it to be marketable. So I came up with the concept of breakfast with the mayor because that's marketable. So we took the mayor along. We gave them bacon and egg muffins. We cooked them. Wasn't McDonald's, closest that we can get in Skipton. But then we just sat and chat. So that whole breaking bread together, but encouraging the schools to not just give me the SRCs, but to give me a breadth of all young people. Give me some of the young people who are disengaging from school, the ones who aren't coming. Give them to me. It's up to the school who they give you. At the end of the day, we did have some schools that only gave us SRCs, and that's okay. But we did have other schools that gave us an entire 70 grade 8s in one session. And it was amazing. It was a lot of bacon going around. But it was really good because you got that full range of who the young people were. Not the ones who were already engaged and already achieving, but the quiet voices. So when we do something like,
You're doing great.
When you're doing things like that, make sure that you've got diverse engagement methods to break down those barriers. Expecting everyone to put their hand up and speak in front of a group is just not inclusive. It is full of barriers. You think about our neurodiverse people, how are they? Are they all going to want to just talk? Some might not be. So we had Mentimeter. We also had just people can blurt out. We also just didn't have anyone knowing what to do. So then we had staff. Make sure you've got lots of staff. I'd just go and sit next to someone who wasn't really engaged and just have a chat, quiet chat on the side. I'd put their answers in for them, but then make sure that we're not then, circling back and highlighting that young person because then they feel scared to contribute next time. So allow their engagement with you to direct how you engage with them. So in every opportunity that we engage with the young people, we have multiple engagement methods. So one-on-one in groups, so you had a group, we still have one-on-one within that group. Written and verbal, so they could just talk or they could just type it in or they could just draw. That's also a way of getting their ideas, and formal and informal.
1 more minute?
Yep. Also went out to employers of young people. That was one way I found the 18 to 25. A lot of employers are actually happy to have. And that's okay, we'll go to them. So this is a bit of a snapshot of Vox Pops. We got the schools to the young people to interview each other and let them lead the conversations. And then that'll take me a little bit over, but anyway, go.
I think it's important that we can hear from young people about issues that young people care about.
This is the joys of experimenting with having our first hybrid YPPN. So thank you all for being patient, and thank you, Beck, for persisting, and Beck for persisting. The best.
Thanks.
We'll try it again.
You've just got the straight video there too, do you? Yeah.
I think it's important that we can hear from young people about issues that young people care about.
And one day they will inherit our community, so they deserve to have a say.
For the children that are in poverty, I think it's just a big issue, and I don't want those children to suffer from poverty like my mum did.
Young people struggle with socialising because of the lack of opportunities.
I believe that kids in the Corangamite Shire want more action on events being taken outside of school hours.
We're in a fast-changing world and kids are changing, we're all changing.
I think jobs and apprenticeships are really important in small communities.
I feel that in the Corangamite area, there's not a lot of diversity.
It's because on the weekends it's usually just footy and netball.
The opportunity for young people to on those events.
More events outside of school instead of just sports all the time.
It's really important that we're encouraging more people of all ages to take part in volunteering.
Anyone come to the night markets in January? Saw these guys perform. They were so good.
Well, youth are an important part of our community.
The reality is, young people are getting their news from social media.
I think that with social media, there's no guarantee that what you see is factual or correct. And I think that social media in general is an unreliable source.
Contact with their friends, as I do live on a farm, and it's harder for me to contact with my friends.
Do you think rural areas and city areas are treated equally?
How do you think the drought has affected young people and their family?
We're being heard, but I don't think the impact and the intention of words being met correctly. Because we don't want to live in a world where we don't get to have say.
So as a quick example, every single session, young people raise the quality of our roads, fix our roads. Councillors and staff who were saying, oh, they're just parroting what their parents say. I'm like, no, they get in their L's and it's terrifying. So it's an impression of social media, and we had young people going, yeah, you shouldn't be listening to it anyway. But the reasons it's important is that social connection. So it was interesting hearing their questions of each other and how they would then interact with that. And that then obviously informed our youth strategy. Sorry.
No, that is wonderful. Thank you so much. And we'll also make sure that the links to those videos and presentations are available through the YPPN network for anyone who wants to follow up. Our next speaker is Zoe Brittain, speaking. Sorry, can you guys online hear us okay? Yeah. So Zoe wears many hats in our community. You may know her from kindergarten, you may know her from Deakin, you may know her from council. I am really excited to hear about the research Zoe did in her PhD, which was to do with seaweed, and how she involved First Nations young people in her research and gave them credit for their work. Are you guys good to go? I can talk a few more seconds if needed. We're similar. Thanks for going first as well, Beck. It's always fun doing those teething issues. Okay, that's over to Zoe. From Zoe, Zoe. We're going to be holding our conference in June at Deakin at the Hydrogen Hub, where Zoe also works. So I just want to do a little plug there. That's the 9th and 10th of June. Would love to see you there. Cool.
So I'm going to power through this, guys. I won't keep us waiting too long, but my current role at Warrnambool City Council is Community Development Officer there, working with different priority groups in council, both staff and internally and then also externally. But we're going to talk a little bit about my PhD, which I finished last year today, and a little bit about how to better engage young people and diverse people from diverse backgrounds. So power through it, we can chat about it later. Essentially, my PhD looked at how non-Indigenous researchers can develop better partnerships with Aboriginal stakeholders. In particular, we were looking at the developing seaweed industry. Worked here with Eastern Ma, and then also in Geelong with the Watherong Cooperative as well. And essentially, we came up with this idea after a bunch of co-development. Originally, our idea was, let's look at oral histories, what traditional knowledge is there about seaweeds, but then after working with our Aboriginal collaborators, we sort of realised that that was not their priority at all, and their priority instead was around revitalising that cultural knowledge for the community, the Aboriginal community themselves. So we started from that, and we sort of came to think about the goals that our collaborators had, which were these 4 here. So their main goals, they wanted two-way sharing between the university and community members. They wanted it to be accessible to all mob, any of the activities we did. They wanted the real focus on intergenerational, which is where the project sort of becomes relevant to this space. And they wanted it to be engaging for the local Aboriginal community. You can see some quotes there from our data we collected from participants relating to those quotes. But essentially for me as a non-Indigenous researcher, I had to ask the question then, if we want to develop a better partnership that meets these goals, the first step is not even necessarily relevant to the community itself. It's actually about how we work together in the research space, separate from Aboriginal collaborators. Often what happens in the research space, and I know from my role at council, this can often happen where we have a reliance on unpaid or paid via, you get your name out there sort of relationships with volunteers in the university space. We'll often get young undergraduates or high schoolers or community citizen sciences to come on board, provide a bunch of labour for us that makes our job work, and then they just get a big thank you and maybe a feed out of it, but what do they actually get? So we decided to completely change sort of our approach. Let's see if this works. And we sort of said, okay, if we want to do this a little bit properly, we need to completely readjust how we're working with each other. So we essentially said anyone who volunteers on this project is going to become a full member of the research team. We wanted that because we knew we needed the diversity within our team to reach these goals. What that actually meant in the end is that on my thesis I ended up with 42 co-authors. We had essentially first-year undergraduates having just as much involvement as, say, as professors. To meet these goals as well, we also ended up hiring 4 Aboriginal young people who were from high school. We trained them up as full research assistants and paid them for their work as well. But the thing was, we couldn't just meet these goals of, oh, that's a beautiful, inclusive thing where everyone comes along and does it together and, oh, great partnership. That doesn't actually happen on purpose. And when we say these values aren't just things that live in our heads or statements we could say, they're actually ongoing actions and practices. And so our sort of mantra for this whole project that went across 7 years was we're prepared to fail and fail well. So we really focused on scaffolding our team, and in particular, not just our young people. When you bring young people into a space, you actually need to do, we found, just as much work with the non-young people to make sure those young people are respected and understood to be valued team members. And so we actually co-developed with all of our team members a range of training sessions and approaches to the way we ran our work. And this just meant that everybody was pretty well prepared. So we did how to work with young people, developed by some different teachers and Aboriginal community members who worked in the space of all ages. That was mainly for when we go out and work in community. We did the basic stuff, like we trained all the young people up on data collection and analysis. We did cultural training, and then we also co-designed a behaviour agreement, and that also included authorship and a level of involvement. And into that, which was co-designed by everyone involved, the young people as well, we also built into that equity. So we understood things like, the more involvement you have, the more events you come to, probably the higher you'll be ranked on authorship or any sort of offers. But we had a caveat to that, was like, unless you have a disability, caring responsibilities, if you're a migrant student, if you're from an Aboriginal background, that the more you do doesn't apply to make it more accessible. The interesting thing we did is we put the adults through the exact same training as the young people. So everyone was on the same page. We understood as well the way we do things naturally isn't often very inclusive. And so we made sure everyone was on the same page. Whilst we actually ran our workshops and our research that we did, we built in these scaffolds to make sure people didn't slip back into these sort of, business as usual. In particular, when we have high schoolers working with professors or students who the professor one day is teaching them and the next day they're working as peers, we really have to build these things in to make sure that didn't just slip back into it. One big thing is we did a lot of peer mentoring. So rather than coming to myself or someone else more senior, we would pair people together. In particular, we did a lot of self-reflective data. The Australian men on the team were very, very bad at this, which is a documented thing. They would say the actions and activities that happened, there wasn't very much self-reflection. It was 2 people did this rather than I felt this way. And so we actually paired all the men together and gave them time on the day to go talk about how to do a better job at that instead of coming to us. The other thing we did with peer mentoring is we particularly focused on pairing the young people, in particular our high school Aboriginal students, as experts in one area. So if someone was struggling with something, we would say, go pair up with so-and-so, who this is their area of expertise, who is, you know, a 16-year-old girl, you're a 45-year-old professor, you go pair with her and ask her questions because this is her area of expertise. The other thing we did is volunteers as participants. So whenever we did work, actually none of the volunteers, or that includes all of the young people and everyone on the research team, knew what was happening. And this is one way we helped to stop this hierarchy building up. They actually went in as blind as the community members we were working with, which meant that they had to feel unsure and process that and figure that out on their own. And they didn't go in with this idea of themselves as experts. We did role assignments, so anyone more senior, usually, to make it more equitable, they pretty much only cleaned up, packed up, picked up rubbish, served lunch. They didn't get to do any of the high level ideas. The lower you were, I suppose, in the traditional hierarchy, the more important work jobs you were given on the day. So first aid, safety, all of that was given to the more junior team members. The other thing we did was skill taps. So we'd go around the room and we'd say what everyone was good at and bad at as we go around. We saw as this team, being bad at things was a positive. When you're going out working in a community space, being able to be a beginner and openly not good at things and say that to people was actually a benefit. If you're able to go, you're working in a lab with a bunch of people who've never worked in a lab, and they go, oh, can you show me the microscope? And you're able to go, no, I never used a microscope. Let's go find someone to show us the microscope. That's actually a net positive. So we make sure we frame the otherwise deficits, like being bad at cooking or bad at whatever, as a positive to really build that relationship. And then quickly, just to end, how did we know it was working? We'll skip that one. Let's go this one, project outcomes. So these are some quotes we had from community members and the participants to how we knew it was working. But over the 6 year, we ended up running 7 workshops for Aboriginal community members across the state, and we had over 100 plus Aboriginal community participants. Working, you'll see some photos here. We were actually able to take 2 of our Aboriginal high schoolers to Sapporo in Japan, present their work at a scientific conference. They also took 5 of them and 3 first-year undergraduate students to a conference in Hobart. And we just acted as a support role for them. They wrote their own proposals and did that. And we were also able, one of our Seaweed art workshops, we went in and advocated for all the young people who created art. In that workshop, they had a formal art exhibition in Geelong to show their artwork. So essentially just treating them as you would any other professional. And I guess these are just some lovely quotes we have from it. The workshops provided a space to sit and listen. It really felt accepting. I always think about how everyone came and how welcoming everyone was, and Seaweed was simply the vessel for connection. And then the bottom quote, which was one of my key learnings from it, was moments when people were playing basketball, chatting and relaxing outside the venue made me appreciate how meaningful the experience was. It was an Indigenous space, and the openness and hospitality in that space was a result of feeling respected and safe. And so I just add that to adding, we often are very outcome focused, but often what young people and diverse people bring is this ability to develop soft skills in your professional teams for how we can build those innate connections and make people feel safe to have those better outcomes at the end.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Zoe. I am just bubbling with questions. So I'm really excited for the conversations we'll get to have a bit later on. Please, there's sticky notes if you want to write down a question. Don't want to lose that between our presentations. Next up, we have 2 amazing young people, Maya and Jenna, who are coming from One Day Studios. I'm going to fangirl a little bit. I got some of your art on my wall, got some of your art on stickers on my printing press. That's awesome. One Day Studios is changing the landscape for creative industries and for young people. And it's doing that locally across the Great South Coast. I'm going to hand over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Maya, so I'm from one of those studios Zoe just mentioned. So we are kind of providing a youth blend, sort of fun today, because we get to talk about what we do at One Day Studios and what we do with young people at One Day Studios. So as the presentation starts up, I'm going to try and just sort of do an overview of what we do, give you a couple of like case studies, just talk a little bit about some partnerships we've done. So there may be some of you in organisations that we've partnered with, so there might be a crossover, which will be cool to look at, and it will just highlight the significance of those partnerships in building confidence and the validation of creative careers. I think, like, as one person, that confidence is paramount to be told by community and to be told by organisations and the people around you that you belong and the pathway that you want to pursue is okay and good. So that's really kind of the mission of One Day Studios, is to tell young people that, to give them a space, to carve out that confidence, to, you know, build these sort of connections and places they can occupy and build those skills to then go out into the world and pursue that. So if you're ready to go, that next slide would be great. It might be very word heavy. I got really into this presentation. So One Day Studios essentially is a social enterprise that aims to break down educational barriers faced by young regional people to pursue work in creative industries. So in those, I believe it was Beck was talking about, she was talking about how in regional Victoria it can be really, really hard and really isolated being in those sort of shires that feel really small and that are very sports centric, or there's nothing to do on the weekend, or I don't want to get a trade, I don't want to go work at this place. So we're here in the southwest to make that a hub so that people aren't leaving. I personally went to go study outside of Warrnambool and have returned because of the work and how it's building here, but I initially left because it was like there's nothing sort of here for me. So One Day Studios is providing all of the network and employment pathways for those young people so they don't have to leave, because a lot of young people don't want to leave their home. They don't want to have to go study in the city, and that should be catered to. It shouldn't be what they have to do. So that's sort of a little bit about what we do. There's a little picture of the team down there. So as you can see, we've got a few young people on the team. So that's another thing. It's kind of a great opportunity for staff to be comprised of young people. Young people working with young people, I think, is very beneficial. Kind of able to meet eye and eye. Like, it's not like kind of like we're adults and we're dividing, you know, creating this program for you. It's just like, yeah, there's a bit of a relationship that you can build there with that. Next slide, please. So some stats before I jump into some case studies. So last year we had a great year. We engaged with 987 individual students, held 439 classes, workshops and events, helped 37 students complete some work experience, partnered with 18 regional schools to present programs. So one of our partnerships was Regional Arts Victoria. This is back in 2024, but we went all out to Mildura to target these really rural, small schools that don't get this kind of exposure. So we went to them, delivered these programs, and just, again, bringing that message of, like, you can do this career. There are so many pathways. Film industry is huge. Video game industry is huge. Illustration, massive. But it's just not talked about. So it's just breaking down those barriers and targeting them where they are to bring this to their horizon and show them that they can do what they want to do. There's a couple of other stats there, but I won't go through them all just for time's sake. But just things like stalls and festivals and just programs we got to run with really, really good influence. That's okay. Yeah, next slide, thanks. Thank you. So the Enable and Switch program is probably our biggest case study, and it was essentially designed by young people for young people. So the whole point of Enable and Switch is that it's a TV pilot, but everyone on board is sort of helped by mentors. So it's young people with the assistance of our mentors in the studio and industry experts to film, to gain skills in things like set design, prop design, acting, script writing, illustration, concept work, all of those things. I did list them in that little pink box. There's just a bunch of roles that aren't necessarily highlighted, but Enable and Switch was designed specifically to give people this opportunity to develop these skills and be a part of something in the community which is really cool. And it was a testament to the ability of young people in Warrnambool, because like it showed it the cinema, and to also have that kind of link back to the confidence of, here's this product you've made, we are sharing it to the community, and the effect of that I just think is so integral to positioning young people to have that confidence to then pursue these careers. Next slide. So a couple of partnerships. So YPPN, we did a really, really great impact report collaboration with them. So that was Jenna worked on that little bird. It's Jenna's illustration. So, being a staff member, but then also having the opportunity to come on board as
I was not a staff member.
That's true.
But I was just a participant.
Yeah,
that's the first thing I worked on.
Kind of led into the staff part. So we had a team of young illustrators and graphic designers, and for them, it was their first time being involved in such a project. And I think the final result and seeing that is just like, oh, that's me. Oh, my name is in the credits. That's, wow, okay, amazing. And YPPN is obviously really, really great at bringing those young people, and then being able to combine that with one of these studios was just, very, very awesome. Southwest Mess, unfortunately not running this year, but over the years has been a week-long sort of workshop where people come in with industry experts from Mess, which is in Melbourne, and they come down with all the tools, all the equipment. You just bring yourself, you bring any level of experience that you have, and again, it's just providing that space, providing those networks, providing that confidence. This year we had the Port Road Folk Festival, so that was a really great community development sort of program that we got to do. So we got out there, people got to sort of interact with us and get to know us, and another employment opportunity.
Yeah, we had Obi employed one of our students. He got employed as an actor for our Oscar, and he had an absolute blast, and it was a really good moment for him to showcase his skills.
It was awesome. And like, for example, YPPN and Port Fairy, those were paid positions for our young people. So we try our absolute hardest, again, talking about how let's get your name out there, let's give you exposure. It's hard as a young person when it's like that's what you're expected to be okay with being given. So you kind of, there's this weird unwritten, like, I don't know, and breaking that down is very important. And One Day Studios is a key sort of part in like, you're working for us, you're developing skills, yes, you might not have experience, but your work still deserves to be paid for. So where we can, we're always adamant that young people get paid for their time. Again, it's just very validating. And then young people go in with confidence to other parts of their career and have those boundaries in place. They're able to say to their employers, that's not appropriate for my time. Actually, I charge this much. This is what I need from you, as this is what you need from me. So it's just breaking that stigma down, which I think is also just as integral as the confidence. So we'll flip it back to a little bit about Jenna and I. So Jenna and I work with young people, but it has also enabled us, all the things that we enable young people to do through the studio, it has happened to us as well. So we are also going out into the community with all these skills that we've learned, all this confidence we've gained, all these networks that we've gathered. So I started working in one of those studios in 2024, so it's been about 2 years now. I was horribly lost. I was just floating around, working at video games, like retail hell, studying a degree I was not interested in, living in the city, and I just stumbled across one of those studios. I don't know why they hired me, but they did, and it just validated this idea of I've always loved to draw, but how do I go about making it into a career? And One Day Studios gave me the sort of foundations of that. And it's like, this is what you do. This is how we can help you do that. Since then, I've illustrated children's picture books. I do a bunch of things in the community. I work with Amplify, which is sort of a youth group in Warrnambool and other surrounding shires. And just that enables me to get like paid positions and exposure in a good way that actually builds my portfolio. So that's been incredibly beneficial to me. Next slide, Jenna can talk now.
So I started last year at One Day Studios. I was doing TAFE here. I was doing the art course here at TAFE, very good course. And I didn't really know where I was going to go after that. Obviously, I was expected to go to uni. and do art in uni. That's kind of what I expected for myself. But I didn't really want to go into a classic sort of just like, oh, I'll get my bachelor in arts, then like go get a normal job and just do that on the side. That's kind of what I had assumed for myself, but it was not my dream. My dream was to become a prop artist. I do cosplay. I've been doing cosplay since I was in grade 5. So when I sort of got linked up with One Day Studios and I started as just a participant and started working with Mabel and Switch, I made this guy Pidge. He was my first prop. I made him before I was a staff member. I realized this isn't a far-fetched dream. This is something I can do in my hometown. And since then, yeah, I've gone on to learn many skills that I did not know beforehand and grow my abilities majorly, as well as I've taught other people how to make props. And yeah, I sort of don't know where I was going with that. Yeah, yeah, he's a little bit battered up at the moment.
So you can pass. This is Mabel's helmet.
Yeah, that's Mabel's helmet.
As well. So that was made by the young person next to her.
Yeah. Was he the cute little?
Yeah, he's a robot. Yeah. Yeah. So
can you tell them about that?
I also have a comment. I'll pass out a comment.
Yeah, there's robots. It's made in, it's like a post-apocalypse sort of time. And Switch, our main robot. Amazing. Yeah, it's just made out of bone.
I was really expecting to go.
Yeah, we use thin foam and you glue it together. It's like you make a pattern and then you make I think there's there's one more.
Sorry, I'm just gonna, as we pass around the top, I'm just gonna get these guys to keep sharing.
Amazing. All right, so we'll wrap up. But yeah, essentially that just highlights sort of the, I guess, I would say, coming from my point of view, just it's that validation, it's that sense of belonging, it's making spaces like One Day Studios where people can come in and just ask questions and say, I would like to learn this thing, and having the sort of assistance from mentors, but without taking away from that young person's sort of vision of what they want. Just giving them the tools to kind of pursue that, I think is, it's just insanely beneficial. And to have it here in Southwest, we're so fortunate. It's a lifeline that I needed when I was a younger person. So it's amazing that I'm in this position now where I can kind of come in and be that person that I needed for young people now.
That is definitely the truly, like, it's one of the best parts of the job, because you see these kids and you're like, that was me and I did not have this, but they've got this. And it's just so good to see.
And I genuinely think that there is such a sort of underappreciation of the arts, just as sort of a societal thing, and that's very unfortunate. We all engage with the arts every day. Warrnambool has, thousands of years, insanely rich history of art. There's just so much history that ebbs from this location that we're in, and we're so fortunate for that, but it's just not talked about. So I think that this is a key sort of component in driving reevaluation. How do we engage with the arts? How do we treat people who are trying to pursue the arts? Because there's this idea of it's not a real job, and that's what we're trying to break down by providing the confidence, networks, and space to treat it as a real job. This absolutely is. So it's been, it's been life-changing for me, and to think that it may be life-changing for other young people, it's just very valuable. And that's a little bit about One Day Studios. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you guys so much. And just on you, you can watch Mabel and Switch for free on YouTube, and there's 2 new episodes coming. Yeah, so watch episode 1.
Slowly.
Yeah, they're coming. They're in the works. Go stand in front of the camera. Thank you guys very much.
No worries. Before I go, there are some postcards from us with QR codes and things if you would like to have a closer look. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Next up, we have Kira from Southwest TAFE. Southwest TAFE has campuses in 3 of our shires. So in Hamilton, Portland, and actually Colac and Warrnambool. So Kira's going to talk to us about the Indigenous Rangers program. And you guys just had your first graduation.
So this month we had our first graduation, which was very exciting. And we've also had the rest of the cohort finish up next week. So there will be another graduation, so a celebration.
Yeah, so huge successes happening.
Yeah, 100%. I am probably the only one that hasn't helped, but I just don't want to miss anything. And I tend to go late when I'm nervous. So
yeah, we're here for it. Any way it comes, we're happy for it.
It's been awesome to listen and find out what's going on within the community. I've definitely taken a lot away today. So
let's get you to stand in front of Beck, unfortunately, just for the camera. That's great. Would you like?
Yeah, quickly. All right. So in 2022, business cases were developed for this program. 2023 funding was received and we launched the Indigenous Rangers project. 2024, a parallel project also received funding, which is for a bit more of the youth side of things, which is the Future Land Guardians or Guringa Jimbayang. That is being delivered to VETIS students, so Victorian school secondary students. To the next one. Yeah, thank you. Design and development process. So this program was co-designed from the ground up. Partner TAFE works side by side with Aboriginal controlled community organisations. And this was also guided by an advisory group ensuring that cultural integrity was at every step. Units were chosen with care, meeting ACO priorities, so Aboriginal controlled organisation priorities, while creating learning that connects students deeper to country, culture and community. The result is training that was culturally grounded, meaningful and directly linked to employment pathways for First Nation students and community. Cert 3 in conservation and ecosystem management had 3 First Nation organisations committed to accredited training for the ranger workforce. So that was Eastern Maar Aboriginal Corporation, Windamara Aboriginal Corporation and Ditchmering, Traditional Owners Aboriginal Corporation. And I think we started with 32 enrolled students and we have finished up, I think, 26. So it was a really good retention rate for a pilot course and it's first of its kind. Training was delivered on country. We had one cohort that was had their training delivered at Sherwood Park, so out near Deakin. And then the other cohort was delivered out on country on Ditchmering. So that's out near the Conda Mission. So that saw, the rangers actually being at their place of work while they were learning and being able to go out with their land care stuff and actually see the physical of what they were learning. There was a few challenges, but we managed to get them through and try to make it the best that we could for it being a pilot course. And then that saw the delivery of the Cert 2. So this was a mixed cohort. This started this year and it has been delivered to, I think, there is 24 VETIS students, so ranging from all different schools. We're also looking at potentially doing a full-time option, sort of as a re-engagement way. Currently, it's only being offered to school students, and that will be a little bit more of a full-time, one semester re-engagement looking situation. as I said before, there was a few challenges. It was hard trying to co-design across different TAFEs, especially being that the other TAFEs were Gippsland or up in Mildura way, so it was not right here. It was all across Victoria trying to co-design a course that hadn't actually been created or delivered. And obviously there's very different country up Mildura way to what there is here, so trying to do it in a way that it fit everybody was quite difficult. And also the traditional TAFE feedback for this Cert 3 cohort didn't work. As you know, when you receive a questionnaire, half the time you don't complete it because it's not something that's at the top of your priority list. But we found that conducting yarning circles and actually going into the classroom and asking the students what they found worked best was what we were able to find was the best way of receiving feedback. From getting the feedback with our highlights and learnings, we found that 100% agreed or strongly agreed that the course strengthened their on-country work, it increased their confidence, and it built relationships with the teaching staff as well. We found that with this, we needed to have a teacher that was there from the start all the way through to finish, knowing that having those good relationships built on familiarity is one of the things that made it a success. And then the next steps for this program is this year a new Cert 3 has started. So that's at Sherwood and Portland also. The Aboriginal corporations have actually sponsored extra staff members to come through and do this course, which showed that it was actually a success, especially in their eyes. And the Cert 3 graduates have a potential involvement with the Cert 2, sort of like a mentoring sort of thing, being that the organisations have those Cert 2 students coming through and potentially doing Cert 3 or above in future years.
So important to see such a pivotal education space working to break down barriers and to try new things. So thank you so much, Kira, for that presentation. It was fantastic. Do I pass back to Sam? Yes. Yeah. This has been amazing. I'm so grateful to everyone who spoke today and for everyone who came in today, because my mind is just buzzing with all the learning and all the thinking that's happening. And all the wonderful things. I think we can all be really proud to be part of the Great South Coast and the work that's happening here. Sam, I'm going to pass back over to you, if I may.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Zoe. I'll just wrap up the recording there. Those that have stuck around and watched to the end, do check us out on yakvic.org.au/YPPN.